Hey, so what should you be doing to prepare yourself for your first job in software? There's a difference between being ready for software, your first software job, and then getting your first software job. This video is going to focus on getting you technically ready, but then you can be ready and not get a software job because the skills involved in getting a job are not necessarily software skills 100% of the time. Um, so if you want to learn about getting your first job in software, I have other content about that. Go check it out. If you don't see something you'd like to see, send me a message on LinkedIn, and I am more than happy to make videos that answer questions. So there are 3 activities you're going to be doing to prepare yourself for a job in software technically. The first is doing like a training curriculum that teaches you how to code, and I suggest something challenge-based where you're actually coding. The second is building projects. The third is preparing for the coding screen by doing algorithm challenges. Okay, so the first one. Freecodecamp is the version of this that I went through. It's free, it's online. They offer front-end and back-end, curriculum, but you're going to have modules that cover topics, and inside a module there are challenges that are very piecemeal that cover one or maybe a couple very small pieces of functionality inside that coding language. So for instance, let's say you're doing JavaScript and there's a module on JavaScript, some part of JavaScript, and then inside that you have a challenge that shows you how to use the map function of JavaScript. So you're going to read a little bit about it, in the challenge, and then you're going to have a problem that you're trying to solve with JavaScript using the map function. And then you have a coding window, coding environment, and you write your code in there, your JavaScript that uses the map function, and then you click run, and it runs your code against a couple tests, a test suite that checks to see if it runs code to check your code to see if your code solves the problem. And if it does, then you move on to the next challenge. And you're going to spend the majority of your time starting out in this activity, this training curriculum that teaches you how to write software in the specific language that you're learning. And, I suggest 500 hours of software training in order to be baseline. And when I say baseline, I mean that you could get a software job. Like you have the skills necessary to do the job if you got it. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the job because it's competitive out there and there are other people further along than baseline. But you could get a job at baseline. So that's kind of your goal, is to get to 500 hours of training. And that 500 hours can include the other activities that I'm going to talk about. The second one, so that's the first one, right? Learning how to code in a coding challenge type curriculum. The second is building projects. So you're going to build 3 to 6 small projects, right? And 1 larger one. So let me talk about the smaller ones first. So these projects, for me, front-end focused engineer, I can give examples of those. So like a to-do app, a calculator, weather API, fetches weather for an area, recipes, you build a recipe, random quote generator, maybe like a cat photo gallery where you're fetching all of the images via an API. So they're small, they take about 2 days, let's say, to build, 16 hours, so maybe less than that, but not more. So they're small and they're beginner level. And if you do more than 6, I think you're getting diminishing return on investment, a diminishing return on investment. So if you do 6, that's ideal. You would still be getting something out of them if you did more than 6, but less than those first 6 you did, and I think you'd be allocating your time inappropriately if you did more than 6. After you do those 6, you're going to do 1 large one. So we're still on the second activity, right? We're doing the first one is the training curriculum, second is projects. Inside this activity, we have the 3 to 6 small projects and 1 larger one. So the larger project is something that solves a real world problem, maybe an industry you have some experience in, a frustration you had in that industry, and you're going to write software that alleviates that frustration or that friction point, helps people in some way, or something that people would want to use. If it's a game, then, if it's entertaining, then it solves a market need. And you're going to try to make money on it. So you're going to try to get users, and you're going to try to monetize it somehow, whether that be through advertising or subscriptions, one-time fee, through selling it to someone who's already in the industry who might be interested in your software as like hey, buy out a competitor, or add your software to their feature set. I will say, if your monetization strategy is to build something to sell to someone else, you need to have users, active users, in order for that to be appealing to someone. Because if it doesn't have users, it hasn't proved itself. So the point is not actually to monetize. The goal of monetizing helps to focus the project, right? And how much time should you spend on it? I would try to time box it to 1 to 3 months. And so, because we're time boxing it, giving ourselves a very limited amount of time to build something that is production worthy, that people will find intriguing and helpful, you kind of have to pick the feature set that you're going to put into it. So it's hard to come up with an idea, but then once you get your idea, you start thinking about all sorts of different cool features that would be great to include, right? And you're going to have to edit some of those out in order to stay inside that 1 to 3 month time frame. And the great part about doing this real world project that you tried to make money on is you're going to learn how to do a project from the ground up, right? So you have to build the thing, and then you have to learn how to host it, how to get it live, so that people can use it. And it probably is going to involve a back end and a front end, whether it's web or mobile. You're probably going to have to build an API, and so you're going to learn how to do that. And the hosting part of it for me was quite the learning experience when I did this. So I think I've talked enough about the projects. The third thing you're going to be doing, so recap: training curriculum, projects, and then the last one is preparing for the code interview, code screens by doing algorithms. And this is different from the first activity, learning how to code, because you're in a contrived problem that you have to solve using code. So you're using the skills you developed in your training program, but in this situation, you're using it in a very specific way to solve a problem that's a little more contrived. And I don't think you see those types of problems out in the real world when you get a job in software. I've been in software since 2016, and I haven't seen too much of this algorithm type stuff out in the real world. You have to build things, solve problems, transform data, lots of stuff, but not too much algorithm stuff. But doing those algorithms has value because the problem-solving skills that you get out of that training are definitely transferable to writing software in the real world. And then, it's helping you be ready to pass those code screens so that you can actually get a job. So there is value there. I do think, the idea of too much results in diminishing return on investment also applies to algorithms. So I said, if you do more than 6 small projects, you're not focusing your time correctly. You're wasting your time, I think. Even though it has value, it doesn't have enough value for that to be the thing you should be doing. Same applies to algorithms. So if you do, I would say 12 intermediate level algorithm challenges, you should stop there. That's enough. And freecodecamp has algorithms, JavaScript algorithms, beginner, intermediate, and advanced. And the difficulty level I have seen out in the wild when I've been doing code screens to get jobs has been the intermediate level. So I would do the ones that freecodecamp has, and I think they have like 10 to 12. And so I would do 12 and then move on. So getting to baseline, right? So if you're trying to get ready for your first job in software, there's a minimum I think you need to get yourself to in order to be ready for that first job. And that's 500 hours of training and then 3 to 6 small projects. So if you don't do that larger project before you start looking for a job, before you, are like splitting your available time between networking, applying to jobs, and training, before you do that bigger project, I think that's fine. Definitely fine, because you should start, networking and trying to get a job prior to finishing your training, because, you want those two things to be concurrent so that you save time, right? Because if you have to do training and then networking, that timeline's this long. If you're doing training and networking, then the timeline is short, and they can be concurrent. Anyway, baseline. Get yourself there, and then keep improving.